Hello again and welcome to this week's edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Our guests today are State Representatives Republican Ken Mendonca, representing Portsmouth and Middletown District 72, and Democrat Susan Donovan, representing District 69 in Bristol. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much for having us.
I'd like to start a little bit by kind of getting some background on how what you did in your previous life, and then we can get into what you're kind of doing here for the last year or so. Would you like to start, Susan?
Sure. Well, I'm from Bristol. I grew up in Rhode Island and went to public schools there. I got my education at Rhode Island College in education and a master's in school administration. And I taught for 35 years in public schools until I retired in 2010. Did the 35 years in the pension system. And then I worked as a consultant for the Brown University Institute for Community Health Promotion for several years. And then I saw this opportunity last year when my state rep resigned, and I jumped in, and here I am.
That's right. Just to be clear, you are replaced Ray Gallison.
I did.
From their Bristol seat. How did you make the decision to get into this, though? I mean, there are probably millions of other things you could do as a volunteer, but why go into politics? Well,
I've always been a community advocate. I worked tirelessly in education, and not only as a parent, but as a community member. And for the environment, I joined Say Bristol Harbor. We were fighting for quite a while LNG transport, liquefied natural gas.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yes, we teamed up with all the other coastal communities. So this was just stepping up that advocacy and continuing on. So that's how I got here.
Well, you got a great background. Anybody that goes through the school system and teaches our kids, I think, is great. Ken, let me segue to you.
I've been a lifelong East Bay resident here. I've been a Portsmouth resident for 20 plus years. My background is systems engineering and information technology and data communications. I have a bachelor's degree from Salve Regina University, and I have a master's degree in business administration from Salve Regina University as well. I've been employed in the defense industry for 24 plus years, primarily supporting the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. It's from a calling standpoint. You can discuss politics for so long, and then at some point you can say, okay, I want to try to see if I can make a difference. And that's really what was a determining factor, to say, okay, I'm going to see if I can make a difference to try to take our state, because we're at the bottom or the near bottom in almost every category that you don't want to be in the bottom of, and see if I can make a difference and see if we can try to move that needle a little bit.
I know a lot of folks, when they initially get into politics, go to either the school committee or the local town council or something like that. You guys made the big step up right into the big leagues. I guess you're almost through the first legislative session here. This is the first one that you guys have been involved with. And pretty soon you're going to be voting on a budget. I guess what I'd like to ask you, and I think what people would like to know, is what are your impressions of the system now that you've lived through it for 6 months or whatever it is? Susan?
Well, it's a slow process, but maybe it has to be. There's a lot of debate that goes on, mostly in committees, a lot of testimony. I have to say I'm impressed with the citizens that come to committees to testify on either side of an issue. They're informed, they're passionate, and it's nice to see citizens involved in the legislative process as well as legislators. I really enjoyed seeing that, and I hadn't had that experience before. But it moves along. It moves along.
I mean, do you feel like, as new guys in the block, kind of, do you feel like you actually have a say in this stuff? Or the impression from the outside is there's this big political machine that's focused on the Providence area, and it just moves along no matter what we say down here in the East Bay. That's kind of my impression anyway.
Well, I think what is important is that, our government is open, and I think everything that we do is recorded. And to make a difference, I mean, there's controlling factions, but because everything is recorded, and we have testimony. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, and we've had some late nights, and we're going to have more late nights, that, it gives everybody's voice to be heard. And when you're on committees, you have the ability to ask questions and try to present positions, whether you're in favor or oppose a bill, and just try to be open to the public so people can understand, what could be underlying in the consequences with the bill or the benefits for the bill. And because of that, our floor sessions are recorded. I was fortunate to be on a panel where they had visiting officers from the Naval Command College come in, and they had asked questions of us, and I think they walked away that they were pretty impressed that again, it's the building is open, anybody can come in, you have the ability to see any hearing you want, whether it be on cable or online. So it's really an open form of government, and I think that's good, and we just need more people who can't make it to the State House to testify, to look at what is going on online and really get a sense as to what's going on in the State House.
How do you interact with your constituents? In other words, there's a lot going on at the State House. We see it every day in the newspaper. The car tax, the 2-year college, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, I guess from an outsider perspective, it seems like it's just going along. The speaker says one thing, the governor says something else, and somehow there's a coming together of all this stuff. Do you guys feel that you truly have a voice in this that's going to influence anything either way?
Well, certainly in committee, we're free to speak with anything that comes before us. And on the House floor, I've seen you do it. You can get up any time and ask a question or state your opinion, and that's all recorded on cable.
Do people really watch this stuff?
I don't know. But no, now with YouTube, you can alert people, hey, go watch that testimony.
Yeah, exactly.
It's up there. You can go to the website any time. I like to hear from constituents. You tend to hear from them when they're against something. I would really like to hear from constituents when they're also for something. I want to hear both sides. So I would encourage people to email me. You can leave me a message on the answering machine also. But we tend to only contact our legislators when we're fired up or against something.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've seen that in local politics as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have received many emails and phone calls, both in opposition and proponents for different legislation, and trying to get the message out. We do use social media with Facebook, and when we have something really important, we'll hold a press conference and try to get the message out there. And again, because this is available, the content is available, you can always take that and you can put that into your web pages to try to keep people informed. And as Rep. Donovan mentioned, that the floor is an opportunity to debate and present your position. And your underlying question is that we need to have that debate and that discussion.
So how does the rest of the process work?
And what people will hear is that bills are held for further study when they're first presented to committees. That gives the opportunity to look at the bill, and if there are some discussions that came out of the testimony, to possibly modify the bill so that when it comes back before the committee to be voted on, that it may have been improved so that the committee can vote on it, and then it'll give it an opportunity for it to hit the House floor, and then all of the members will be able to vote on the bill.
Okay, now what percentage of the committee has to vote to approve?
In the Finance Committee, we've only voted on one bill, but my understanding it's just a majority.
Simple majority.
It's a simple majority.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the testimony, that's where the improvements to a bill are made, and that's what's so important, having people come and experts come before the committees, because they think of things or know things, they're experts, that the committee doesn't know.
Yeah.
So what'll happen is it'll come to the floor eventually as a sub-A, they call it, and we'll vote on the improved version of a particular bill when it comes to the floor.
Okay, so let's say the bill passes, goes to the whole assembly, passes that. Then what? Is it law then, or?
No, it has to go to the Senate.
Senate, okay.
Correct. And then
Just like the national system.
Yes.
essentially.
exactly,
Yes.
and then ultimately the governor has to sign it,
Okay.
or she can choose not to sign it, and it can still become law, or she can veto it.
Yeah, one of the concerns or thoughts that many of us have is that by putting a bill for further study is like postponing the vote on it forever or something. An example might be the line item veto, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about that or not, but
Look, from the line item veto has been implemented in, I think it's about 40 states now.
44, I think.
44, yeah.
44.
Right.
And each one has implemented it slightly different. Now, on the surface, the line item veto sounds good, and I'm a supporter of it. However, you have to be cautious, because if you give that power to the governor, if there's a governor who has a different philosophy than the body, they can just do as much damage with the line item veto, where we see as an opportunity to maybe use the line item veto to maybe cut out some areas of the
Right.
budget. And remember, the budget still has to be balanced with the line item veto. So if you take something out, you have to put something else in its place. So there are good intents with it, and I'm a supporter of it, but you do have to realize that there is also a component of it that can be used
sure,
against.
and I understand that, I guess, but you were saying, how do we know what we're doing is the right way to go? Surely you can look around at the other states and say, which one of these would we want to, and it's probably the same, it may be the same down the road, at least, for marijuana and a bunch of other issues. It's not like we have to reinvent the wheel in Rhode Island. I realize we have to tweak it to make it fit Rhode Island, but it seems like there's a lot of examples out there.
Yeah, there are, and I'd like to see the process before anything happens. I'm also for the line item veto. I think it's working in a lot of places, but it's probably not working either. So we need to look at all of it and find what's best, like Ken says, for Rhode Island.
Yeah, we haven't seen the bill
No.
hit the floor. I'm not sure if it came out of the Judiciary Committee. I'm assuming that's where it would have heard, where they would have heard testimony on that. I mean, we're still hearing testimony in finance, where we're hearing individual bills. So I'm not sure where that stands, but I know that there was at least one bill put in regarding the line item veto.
I was going to ask both of you about kind of what you've learned in the last, during this session. And maybe to start with that, I wonder, is there like a little academy or something for folks like you that are new, that they get told, okay, sit down, we're going to tell you how it works?
Yes, they did an orientation
Okay.
in the very beginning, back in November, correct? We all went.
Well, boy, was it November or December?
It was maybe November 29th, so yeah, it was close to December.
Yeah.
It was late November. Where they told us how things work in the process, and it's a lot to absorb in like one morning and afternoon. But I'm awed by the sheer volume of bills that get introduced on the floor. Whether they're good or bad, I don't know, because we don't sit on all committees. We are on completely different committees, so I don't see what Ken sees, and nor does he see what I see. But there are a lot of bills, and I'm sure, and how that gets how that gets all sorted out is.
So you're still kind of watching the process.
I'm watching, yeah. You can't possibly bring all those bills to the floor. I mean, so the committees have to stop some of them. The sheer volume is astounding. So.
Yeah, they had freshman orientation, and we also
Yeah,
had.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And we also had we were able to take tours of different branches of government, and
Yes.
we took a tour of the judiciary. So I think there is a process there, and I think it's very helpful. And I think the people who work at the State House, they've been very great for the freshmen, and brought us in, and it didn't matter what party they were there to help, and have been very helpful. So that really makes it easier when you're stepping into the probably, my second job is, I have a full-time job, but my second job, the office that we work in, is a spectacular building. I mean, the State
Yeah.
House is a beautiful
Oh,
building.
yeah,
and
sure,
it's just
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, these are state employees
Yes.
that are nonpartisan, theoretically.
correct. They work for the
The
Joint Committee on
bureaucracy,
Legislative
they keep
Services.
the wheels turning and things
Yes.
like that.
And very helpful.
Yeah. Now, were there any surprises? Was there anything that surprised you over the course of the term that you didn't expect, perhaps, when you got into this thing?
Well, the surprise was the sheer volume of
The
bills
volume,
that get introduced on the floor, and then they get passed up and sent away to committee. That surprised me. I had no idea there was that much business or potential business going on. People are very busy in that respect.
And this is basically it's a part-time legislature, right?
It is, and I don't know when we're going to be finished. With things the way they are, with the $100+ million revenue shortfall, I think things are going to get very difficult going forward in the next few weeks. So I don't know when we're going to get out.
But just to follow on, I think surprise. I don't know if it was surprise. People had prepared me that it was going to be a lot of time, and it is a major time commitment.
Yes.
And when you think about, I mean, the other night we were still hearing testimony until 10:30, and we have the House session at 4 o'clock, and you have to get there before to prepare. So, and you need to be able to communicate with your constituents. So, I use my travel time up to the State House as an opportunity to call back. So that 40-minute ride, I use that to try to return phone calls. But it's certainly a 25-hour a week or more, because you may have to attend council meetings on a Monday night and then follow up with people on Saturday. So from that standpoint, and I've been enjoying my time, but it is definitely a time commitment, and it's definitely something that if you want to be effective, you need to be able to put the time in.
And you want to be out there. I was busy for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This Saturday I have a meeting at the Town Hall with veterans, with Kasim Yarn, the Director of Veterans Affairs, and the other legislators. So yeah, there's always something to go to, something to attend, whether it be more business related to the House or just community related, to be there with the community members. So there's a big time commitment. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But I
So
I don't work full time like Ken does, so it's a little easier for me.
So if there is a surprise, just the amount of work that needs to be done on doing this.
Yeah.
As I say, it sounds like a part-time legislature, but it really almost isn't.
No, and when I mentioned the other night we were there till 10:30. I mean, we've had nights that are later than that, but I think it's all too important that everyone who's there, their testimony is heard.
Yes.
And other legislators are the same way. And we say, okay, yeah, I mean, we know it's going to be time because there's a whole lot of people who may have signed up, but that's what we're here for, and that's what's important.
Yeah. Some of them didn't get over till 2 o'clock a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
A testimony on on more controversial issues. I know I was there till 10:30 one night. Also, was in a labor committee. So it's time consuming, and people get up and go to work the next day.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's got to be tough. I know, Ken, you had 3 or 4 pre-election goals that you were saying you were going to work on. One was veterans and pension tax reform, et cetera. How do you feel like you've been able to work on those over the course of the year?
I have co-sponsored several pieces of legislation to try to see what we can do to eliminate the state income tax on pensions. Those bills have been heard. I actually sponsored a bill myself that would provide relief for those widows or widowers, and
I signed that.
And Representative Donovan was a co-sponsor on that. Those bills have been heard in committees. Now it's up to the committees for them to come out of committees, and some of that has to do with the speaker and his position on those to give us an opportunity to try to provide some relief.
What committee would that come from? It wouldn't come from the Veterans Committee, which you're on, I think.
It has been heard in. It has not been heard in the Veterans Committee yet. We heard it in Finance. Yeah. The Veterans Committee.
Oh, right. You're also in Finance. Yes. I see. Just looking at my cheat sheet.
So we've heard those bills in Finance. Again, we've only had one vote in Finance, so because we have to go through the governor's budget, and then there's revised budget. And we had a meeting last night where we looked at another revised article in the governor's budget, and now we're looking at individual bills.
This all sounds like another overnighter or something to me.
Yeah.
You guys have to look forward to.
Unfortunately, anything that has a price tag attached to it at this point in time is going to be difficult with the way the state goes.
I agree, and it's the same locally, as you know, in your own towns. And you living in Portsmouth certainly know. I guess to me the interesting thing is that how this stuff eventually comes together and we keep running. The state keeps going somehow. One of the questions I wanted to ask you guys too is how important is party? You're a Democrat, you're a Republican. When you're up there at the state house, how important is that distinction to your party sort of bureaucracies help or support you in some way when you're up there?
When you look at the votes, that there are a lot of votes where it's unanimous on the House floor, where there's bills that make sense. And again, there are sponsors and co-sponsors. Most of the bills that hit the floor are sponsored by Democrats, and there may be co-sponsors, Republicans, but you know, there's a lot of bills there that we all agree with, and that we think it's good for the state, good for the people of the state. And then there are some of those that, you know, that there's not a lot of ideology clashing that I've seen so far. And it's people
so you
trying
guys
to work.
don't get told what you guys should do this if you're a Democrat or Republican.
I can't speak for the Democrats, but I can certainly tell you on the Republican side that we have not held a meeting where we said, okay, we're all voting this way, we're permitted to vote what we think is in the best interest of the state, what might be in the best interest of our district.
I think that's what people want to hear. Essentially, that's a good thing.
I've seen Democrats vote with the Republicans. You know, you see everything up on the board. Most of the time, we can read the floor calendar before we get there, and if we have a question, for instance, the other day, I called someone, hey, how does the communities feel about this particular bill? So you have the opportunity to ask those questions before you get to the floor, because you certainly don't want to get there and say, oh, wait a minute, I don't know how to vote on that.
But there's a lot of homework too behind all that.
Correct. Yeah.
And do you all have staff that prepares this stuff for you, or
It's
are
all
you the staff?
no. You can read the floor calendar. I mean, it's all on our websites. We can go and look at the committee calendars, the floor
Right, so
calendars.
you know what's coming up.
So we know it's coming up. And if there's an issue, someone will come and talk to you. I mean, that's their job, to come and talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, we have a small staff, and that staff is really. We haven't talked too much about it, but some of the satisfying things have been able to help people who still may not have received their 2015 tax return.
Oh, yes.
Or constituents that have been caught up in UHIP. That we have a small staff that we can try to get that name of a constituent to them, and they can work with the different agencies to try to help out. But as Representative Donovan stated, that when it comes to reading the legislation, we read it. We do. The minority office does have a legal counsel, so we can go to the legal counsel, just like the Democrats have a legal counsel. And say, I'm not really sure what is the intent of this bill. I can read the summary and I can read but what really is this doing? How does this impact us?
Yeah.
So we do have
to help you understand it.
Yes.
So you know
Sometimes the summary is not enough.
Correct.
It's very brief.
Correct. And it can be inaccurate. The summary can be inaccurate
or
as well.
ambiguous. You just don't. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of legalese.
It boggles the mind what you all have to deal with. Let me ask you this though: you're representing Bristol,
and a little bit of Portsmouth and Prudence Island.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
That's why. Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really
All
good,
of Prudence
good to know.
Island.
So you're one of us then.
Yeah.
What are some of the key issues that your constituents are saying? We need action on this, or we need to do this.
Well, jobs in the economy, is that, I mean, that's what when I was knocking on doors, people are just concerned about that. We don't want to see empty storefronts in downtown Bristol and empty industrial parks here. We want to keep the momentum going. I think we have made improvements, but there's so much more to do. And like Ken was saying, we're tired of hearing that we're ranked on the bottom.
Exactly. So everybody else, I think.
Yeah, that we keep getting that pounded in. But I think we are making progress in that respect. But for me, I want to see that progress, but I also don't want to leave people behind. We want to see everybody benefit from a strong economy. We want our graduates to be able to stay in Rhode Island, pay taxes, and work here. We want, as well as draw new residents into the state. So we want to be competitive with Massachusetts and Connecticut in the business side, but we also want to offer wages that are competitive with Massachusetts. So continuing to work on our minimum wage so that it looks like our neighbors, maybe offer benefits like our neighbors do. They're talking about some earned sick time eventually, something being worked out with that. And, education, I don't know about you, Ken, but I hear a lot about education funding, especially in Bristol.
Exactly. Well,
with
Portsmouth as well.
Yeah. We're heavily reliant on property taxes. It's always been that way. And I think looking forward, eventually, hopefully we're doing better. We can help the cities and towns with education. Higher education is a huge issue for the governor. She wants to attract businesses here with a educated workforce. That's why she put her tuition plan in place, which now with the revenues looking the way it is, I don't, you
Yeah,
know,
I spoke with the governor a week ago, I guess,
Yeah.
about that very issue.
Yeah. So our students here in Rhode Island have the highest debt in the nation. It's crushing. And why is that?
Yeah.
You know, we need to support higher education as well as K-12 education.
Yeah, I think you know, being a school teacher, you're I'm sure very familiar with the problem of state funding.
No.
You know, and it's tough for, particularly in an environment where nobody wants to say the word tax increase at all, if they can.
We're in a regional school district, and
Right.
and we're at loggerheads with each other right now over state aid to education. So you know we got a decision from the Supreme Court that did not go in Bristol's favor, and so that's you know, that's an issue, and I think the state needs to come in and help us make regionalization work somehow, and I don't know what that's going to look like
Yeah.
going forward either. So.
But I understand the school itself, the schools are pretty good.
Yes, my children were in school before regionalization, and that's where I think I started a lot of my educational advocacy, because our school infrastructure was crumbling at that time, and regionalization afforded us the opportunity to improve our schools, build middle school, make additions, make improvements. And there's a report coming out in this month on the state of school infrastructure in Rhode Island, and it's going to be difficult to read.
Well, it looks like any other infrastructure in Rhode Island, unfortunately.
Yes, it's not only our roads
Yeah.
and bridges that are crumbling,
Yeah.
and that's a huge issue. It's not just Providence. You know, we always hear you know, the condition of Providence schools, East Providence, Barrington, leaking roofs. I mean, it's all over the state. So that's an issue.
Sure. In the short term, what we're hoping to see that we'll see a freeze in any reductions in the state school aid, and there's some legislation that's been put
Yes.
in to try to hold them harmless, both Portsmouth and Middletown again. From a grassroots standpoint, the paving on Middle Road, I've heard a lot from my constituents
sure.
about the paving on Middle Road and some suggested improvements and the like, and you know, we've been able to respond to those to try to help them out. But you know, Representative Donovan is correct that, I mean, we understand that education is important, and if we have infrastructure that's crumbling, instead of putting a plan in place to the Rhode Island Promise Plan, maybe we should look to reinvest those dollars into our educational
Yeah,
system.
we're just about out of time, and I'd like to thank you guys both for coming in, and I hope you'll come back.
Anytime.
You know, come back and talk to us about what's going on up there, because we need folks like you to keep working for us up there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and press on. Okay. It's Doug Smith. See you next time.
Portsmouth This Week is a regular program on Newport County Television that brings you important information on town organizations and policies and discussions with town leaders and other important decision makers. A listing of program times is available on Cox Cable Channel 17 or at the program listing website. A listing of all programs with YouTube links is also available at the Portsmouth Town website.